Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
The nature of the modern world is that you will never, from now until the day that you die, ever finish. I've only got so much time. I need to be excellent with that time. Your calendar is not just your calendar. It is a tool to help you understand your supply of time. And your task list is really there to help you understand the demands on your time. How do I know that my planning worked? You have no doubt in your mind that week, out of 100,000 variations of that week, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, that was the best that I could have done. In any alternate reality, this one was the best that I could have done. I met my challenges with as much resourcefulness and willpower and ingenuity and leverage as I possibly could.
That's Demir Bentley. He's the co-founder of Lifehack Method and the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Winning the Week, my new favorite book on planning. He's helped over 70,000 professionals create more freedom in their lives, and now he's going to help us plan better to win the week ahead. So you'll learn 1, why nobody really plans their week and how to fix that. 2, the master key to getting ahead of your to-do list. And 3, how to transform your calendar into a power tool. I'm Pete Mockaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. Now, here's Demir. Demir, welcome.
Good to see you, Pete.
I am so excited to learn all about winning the week and your flavor of productive goodness. And I think I'd like to start with your origin story.
Like a comic book.
Yes, very much. Maybe there's a radioactive spider, but in your case,
it's close.
You're working at Wall Street, not loving it so much. Take us into the scene.
Yeah, like a lot of people, I learned to perform for love when I was really young. And I don't want to get too deep, but I think a lot of people just realize that they just get a little bit more love and attention if they can get those A's and if they can exceed. And so I figured out young, I was like, oh, I can do this stuff. I can perform. I can get grades. I can write papers. I can produce things. And so, I became one of those insecure overachievers who's really developed a strong, juicy core of I'm only valuable by what I can do and what I can produce. So obviously I ended up on Wall Street because that's where all the insecure overachievers, the most insecure overachievers go when they really want to prove to themselves that they are somebody. And I really was that if I can make it here, I can make it anywhere dreamer. I really felt if I could hack it in finance that maybe that deep hole inside of me would finally truly be filled and I would be somebody. No, I jest a little bit, but seriously, there was that juicy core of I've got to make it in finance. And I did. I got to a really high level finance, but I did it by working 80 to 100 hours. And my secret sort of sin or my secret hidden behind the scenes was that I was actually really massively unproductive. I just masked that lack of productivity with brute force work and just a deep guilt and shame that kept me coming back to the trough. And so there was an episode where I remember thinking that I was so proud that my boss had come in on the weekend and seen me there all alone. There's nobody else on the floor. And it was just there. And right after that weekend, he called me in and he said, this is not actually a good thing. Everybody else can get their work done in 40 to 50 hours. And you seem to be needing 80 to 90 hours of work to produce what other people are producing in 40 to 50 hours. So that was my first big wake up call of I've been wearing this like a badge of pride, like a badge of honor. The busy badge, I call it. I've been awarding myself the busy badge, thinking that I'm just intrinsically more valuable than other people because I have this ability and this desire to outwork everybody else and come in on nights and weekends, and just realizing that actually other people saw that as sad and pathetic. That didn't stop me. I wish I could have said that was the moment when I stopped, but actually I had a health implosion. I was overweight. I was overstressed. I wasn't sleeping. And I got a mystery illness. After much testing and 3 surgeries, I was diagnosed with something called salaryman sudden death syndrome. It's not very common in the United States, but it's extremely common in Asia, where otherwise healthy young person dies from extreme overworking. And so although there was no definitive, you've got this condition, there was a general recognition among my 3 doctors that if I kept working this hard, I would probably at some point in the future die. And that I needed to immediately cut my hours down to 40 hours a week. Now, mind you, I'm doing everything I can to keep my head above water, working 80 to 100 hours a week. And they're telling me, as of next week, you need to bring it down to 40 hours a week. And so that weekend, I talk about it a lot in our book, that weekend was this just crisis moment. It felt like my whole world was crashing in. I thought I was going to have to quit my work, or I'd certainly get fired. It just felt like there's just no way that it's going to happen. And yet there was a series of events that happened over the course of that weekend. I walked in next week. I worked 40 hours. I got everything done in 40 hours. And that was the beginning of this sort of rebirth, this like religious awakening that I had, realizing that I suck at this productivity thing. And I realized that so much more was possible. And that was the beginning of my journey in my personal productivity work. And also the beginning of my journey is ultimately, which is hilariously, becoming a productivity coach for other people and showing other people how to have that same transition.
Wow, this is powerful. You have a chat about productivity. You don't think it's going to be life or death, but for you, it literally was. Become more productive or die, or lose your job. Like high stakes stuff. So I want to dig deep for a moment. You mentioned deep shame there. What were you ashamed of?
So like many people who are unproductive, I'm a very emotional worker. And emotional worker isn't defined by like crying in the corner. That's not what I'm talking about. Emotional workers are the kind of people that if they're feeling it, they can show up and do incredible acts of productivity, incredible feats of productivity. But they can also have incredibly long periods where they can't motivate themselves and they're not feeling it. And in those periods, they can barely bring themselves to lift a pencil. And in those moments, they feel just incredible self-lacerating shame and unworthiness. And they know and think that somebody's going to find them out.
Well, Demir, lay it on us the way. What were the initial steps you took when you were in the I can't lift a pencil mode? And ultimately, how did you survive by doubling your output per hour, I guess, by cutting your hours in half?
The funny thing is what really solved my first tranche of the problem was something that everybody thinks that they know that they should be doing. And I'm going to come back to the word thinks that they know. And it's just planning your week. The problem with this is there's nothing more dangerous than somebody who thinks that they know something, because then they approach it with zero curiosity, zero sense that they have anything to learn or anything that they might be doing wrong, and way too much confidence. And so we actually ran a survey of 5,000 people, and the survey was only people who managed between 5 and 50 people. So managers, people who are already very successful, earning a lot. We asked them, what are the top 5 things that you can do to be highly productive? And almost everybody in the top 3 put planning their week. So that's a dumb moment. Almost everybody knows it. Out of 5,000 people, it is common knowledge that you should plan your week. Then we followed up with the same 5,000 respondents. We said, have you planned the 4 out of the last 4 weeks? And out of 5,000 people who had said very confidently, these are people who manage between 5 and 50 people making over $100,000. Out of those people who confidently said, yes, you have to plan your week, less than 1% of people had planned their week in the last 4 weeks. So there's something odd about planning your week. It is something we all know that we should be doing, and less than 1% of us have a consistent practice in doing it. That kicked us off on a sort of curious exploration around why that is. But let me just say, coming back to my story, that born out of sheer desperation, I looked at my calendar and I did what I call the first planning session of my life, the first real planning session, where I took all 40 hours and I took every task that I needed to get done and I allocated it a spot in that 40 hours. And every single 30-minute increment had to fight for its life to be on my calendar. That was the very first real planning session I had. And lo and behold, it went from spinning my wheels at 80 hours a week to actually getting everything done 40 hours a week. And so I will say that my rebirth, my sort of aha moment, came a lot earlier than the framework that I built around it. I think I spent a lot of years trying to understand what happened to me, what went right, what was the difference, what changed. When I finally got that through the course of my coaching, I was able to sort of boil it down into the winning the week method. And now we have a framework where we can explain it to people. But at the time, I realized that it was just me being desperate. And in my desperation, I realized I've only got so much time. I need to be excellent with that time.
Okay. And so then you were putting individual tasks onto specific pieces of time. Like Thursday, 4 p.m., I am answer my emails or whatever the thing is. So it went there, scheduled, appointment style.
Yeah. It's called calendarization, right? It's the idea that you take all of your tasks and actually put it on the calendar. And most people stop short of this. I'm going to say like calendarization is when Pinocchio becomes a real boy. That's the magic moment, right? If you've done all of your planning, meaning if you've reviewed your calendar and looked at your priorities and looked at your task list, but you do not take your tasks and put them in a specific slot in the calendar, what's happened is you've done all of the necessary work, but Pinocchio cannot become a real boy now. It is when you take your tasks and put them on your calendar that you truly become a plan, because now you're actually allocating. By stopping short, we stay in the realm of wishful thinking, right? Wishful thinking is sort of, we've got all of the things that I want to do over here in this bucket, and I've got my available time in this bucket. And I'm just sort of vaguely in a wishful thinking way, hoping that by the end of the week, they'll match up. But by not actualizing them, by not marrying those two markets together, then we never really meet base reality. And this is where a lot of people's plans fail. And that's why a lot of people say, oh, planning doesn't work for me. And that's why a lot of people stop planning after initial tentative attempts to plan. Is because the truth is that the way most people plan doesn't result in a holy crap moment where they just kill it in their week. And so they stop doing it because they didn't feel that magic. They didn't feel the lift. You know, the moment in a Tesla when somebody hits the accelerator and your face sort of gets plastered to the back and you go, oh, that's power. That's what you want to feel in a productivity technique when you try it, to be like, oh, this works.
I love that. The planning gives you a holy crap moment. Like, whoa, this works. And I feel that way about most interventions that I assess. It's like, it's like, hey, is that supplement do anything for you? Well, I mean, I think it might potentially be making a little bit of a difference. More and more, I've thought, I don't really want to mess with much of that in my life. It's like, I want to be like, holy smokes. Like, I feel the difference with fish oil and saffron. And the rest, I'm like, maybe. And so that's that. Likewise, I think, well, it was Taylor Jacobson, shout out to Taylor, over at focusmate.com, which is awesome, who put us in touch. And that's how I felt about that tool, which is online accountability partners on demand. Very cool. It's like, holy crap, this is making it happen. Wow. And there's no maybe squinting about it. And you're telling me we can have that experience from the act of planning our week. And if we haven't felt it, we ain't been doing it right. Is that fair to say, Demir?
Absolutely. People say, how do you know you're in love? It's like, because it hits you like a sledgehammer. How do I know that my planning worked? Because it hits you like a sledgehammer. You have no doubt in your mind that week, out of 100,000 variations of that week, different alternate realities. Imagine 100,000 different realities of the past week, where there's 100,000 versions of you playing out the same scenario. You can look at yourself in the mirror and say, that was the best that I could have done. In any alternate reality, this one was the best that I could have done. I met my challenges with as much resourcefulness and willpower and ingenuity and leverage as I possibly could. And you just know it.
I love it. All right. Well, Demir, lay it on us. Calendarization's important. How do we pull this off? How do we, in fact, win the week?
So I'm just going to start with just the tiniest bit of setup, which is that a lot of people assume, and I think I totally understand why they would, that if you're doing a technique right, that it's going to feel good. Let me just start by foregrounding this, that when you're doing planning right, there is a base amount of fear, anxiety, and stress that is just table stakes. If you're doing any planning and you're feeling fear, stress, and anxiety, you're doing it right, because the essence of planning is pulling forward all of the unmade decisions, worries, potential things that could go wrong in the next 7 or 30 days. And you're pulling that into a 30-minute moment. How do you think that 30 minutes is going to feel? Not amazing. So first, let's let go when we're going into planning this idea that it needs to feel good or that I'm doing it wrong if I'm feeling fear, stress, or anxiety. No, that is the trade-off. You're taking a slap in the face on Friday instead of a punch in the teeth on Wednesday.
Okay, Demir. So it's not going to be one of those Instagram-worthy situations where I've got my latte and my multicolored Post-its and I'm crafting a beautiful visual of what's going to happen in my week or month. That's not what it's like.
So what we did was we condensed it down into 5 simple steps. So step 1, actually, I'll get a little clever. In our book, we talk about step 0. The reason we call it step 0, not to annoy people, is because you only have to do this step once and you'll never have to do it again. And that is create an environment for your planning that is a reward in and of itself. My wife and I, we go to a little brunch place, a little like French cafe experience. It's like our date. Call us a nerd if you want. We probably deserve it. But this is like our date afternoon. We have babysitting. We go down to this French cafe. We spend 30 minutes planning, and then we'll spend the rest of the time, 2.5 hours, just connecting, because there's no better way to connect with your spouse than to get resolution on the unresolved things in your relationship. So step 0, do this once. You'll never have to do it again. On Friday night, go to a wine bar. Saturday morning, go to a cafe. Create an environment for your planning that you actually look forward to. That's reward in and of itself. And that will help tamp down on that avoidance that people get around planning, because you'll think to yourself, oh, this is a treat. I'm making it a treat for myself. Okay, that's step 0. Step 1, and this is something you do every single week. Learn a lesson from the past week, 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes. Don't learn 5 lessons, not 500 lessons. Just skim the cherry right off the top of the cake. What is, if I had to find one lesson that I could derive from the past week, something that I did really well, something that I didn't do well, what would that be? And fold that into the next week. How can I apply that in the next week? This is what we call a learning loop. And this is how people get better, whether it comes to flying airplanes or playing sports or playing music. They all have positive learning loops built into their practice, where they're not just practicing, they're doing what we call positive intentional practice, where they're focused on what did I do well or what did I do wrong, and how can I use that to get better? And just 5 minutes. That's it. Not 50, not 2 hours. Take 5 minutes and just observe to yourself one thing you did right that you want to keep doing, that you should do more this week, one thing that you did wrong that you should maybe correct and learn from this week, and then move on and roll that into your planning. That might sound small, but do that 100 times, 200 times, and all of a sudden you're getting 1% better in a cumulative sort of exponential way.
And so the learning could be anything from, hey, when I worked out in the morning, I felt very energized. Maybe I should try that again. Like that kind of a thing.
Perfect.
So that's our first step. What's number 2?
Step 2, choose a leverage priority, because the number one mistake people make is they'll either choose too many priorities, which is an oxymoron, because the word priority literally means the one thing above all other things. So when somebody says to you, I have 5 priorities, it's like you are misunderstanding what the word priority means. Priority means the order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So people tend to conflate multiple priorities instead of having one, or they choose a priority that has no leverage in it. So I just want to talk about that for a moment. When we choose something that has no leverage, it means that we have to expend a lot of effort to do that thing, but it is no easier to do it the next time that we do it. And when we apply leverage to something, we're doing it in such a way that every time we come back to do that thing, we have made it at least 1% easier to do it the next time. Sometimes 50%, sometimes 80%. And so leverage is just walking through your world in such a way as you can say, how do I choose a priority such that the thing that I do this week does not just benefit me this week, but it makes every week in the future easier? This comes from the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan.
I was going to say, it's ringing a bell. Yeah.
Papasan, yeah. Shout out to Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. I've read that book 12 times. It's a productivity Bible for me. If you haven't read it and you're out there listening, it's a must read.
It is amazing. Jay's been on the show. It is one of my all-time faves.
It's the ultimate. So ultimately, it's really just about, as you're going through your planning, let's choose a leverage priority for the week, because ultimately you don't have to be perfect. I know this sounds crazy. People think I can only be great at productivity if I'm perfect. No, if you are in there doing things with leverage every single week, everybody else is going linear and you're going exponential. And all it takes, and I've seen this with clients again and again and again, is when I get them doing that for 6 weeks, there's something magic that happens between week 4 and week 6, where the cumulative effect of 4 weeks of doing something that makes the future easy, by the time they get to week 4, 5, or 6, they start seeing that loop coming back around and start saying, wow, there's something different about my life now. Things are feeling easier.
And can you give us a couple examples of the sorts of things that have reverberating, echoing effects for many weeks to come?
Yeah, so it could be really anything, but I'll just give you a stupid example. So when we first had our first kid, I had one of those overly fancy coffee machines where it took like 30 minutes to make a cup of coffee. But now we had a newborn and I just realized, this is crazy. It's taking me 30 minutes to make a cup of coffee. I make 2 cups of coffee a week. That's 2 cups of coffee a day. That's effectively an hour a day that I'm losing to simply getting caffeine into my system. So I basically said, like, no matter how much I love this coffee, it's not worth an hour of my day. I went ahead and created the simplest coffee station. I consolidated everything down. That whole moment, that aha moment, took me 15 minutes. Now today, it takes me 10 minutes from the moment I walk into the kitchen to the moment I walk out. It's 10 minutes to make a cup of coffee. So what does that mean?
Well, now, Demir, if I may, what are we talking? Are we talking about a drip? Are we talking about an AeroPress? How is this done?
It's just the button. Slide the thing in. They're like a Nespresso.
All right, Nespresso machine.
Nespresso. Slide in the pod, hit the button. There's a little time for warm up. I've got the coffee foamer and it's just 10 minutes in and out. And I've got a delicious tasting coffee that's 90% as good as the one I made in half an hour, but it comes out in 10 minutes or less. And I'm talking about, I could really, if I was rushing, do it in 5 or 7 minutes, but I'm being generous saying it was 10. So think about this in terms of leverage. I did something once that cost me 15 minutes to do in terms of setup. That every single day now, instead of spending an hour, I'm spending 20 minutes. That means there's 40 minutes a day ad infinitum that I get back into my life.
Okay, cool. All right. So we got steps 1 and 2. What's 3?
Yeah. So 3 is interrogate your calendar. Have you ever heard the term review your calendar? Oh, do a calendar review. I find that to be so gutless and passive. Review, like, okay, I glanced at it, right? The truth is your calendar is a slippery bastard. There's so much in there that could screw you up, but it doesn't jump out at you and say, hey, Demir, watch out for this, watch out for this. It's there, but it's just sort of buried. So I like to think about your calendar. You need to put it on the witness stand, and like one of those procedural shows or a witness in a movie, you got to sweat your calendar. You got to get in there. You got to hit it from the left, hit it from the right, try to trick it, try to catch it, right? And so a lot of people will do a passive calendar review, and there's still a lot of landmines hidden in their calendar. It could be that meeting that got rescheduled from noon to 9 and you just missed it, but now it's going to blow you up next week. You're going to forget it. It's going to make you look bad, right? It could be that you volunteered to take your kids and drive your kids and their friends to a volleyball game, but you forgot about it. You didn't put in your calendar, another landmine. And when these landmines blow up, it causes huge amounts of stress and anxiety. You lose social credibility and capital, and you end up paying a higher price in terms of your cognitive energy and your actual time to try to fix it in the moment. That's what I call a landmine. So you need to get into your calendar and sweat out those landmines. You need to pour it out and really find them. And the reason why is you need a calendar that you trust more than your instinct. To me, when I look at my calendar now, a lot of people will say, well, Demir, you're supposed to be here next week. And I'm like, I don't think so. And they'll say, your calendar says so. And I'll say, then you're absolutely right. Because that's the kind of effort and attention I give to my calendar. I want my calendar to be the single source of truth in my life when it comes to my time availability and my time supply.
Okay, noted. So when we interrogate it, we're really looking at each thing and ensuring that it's true, that it's accurate, it belongs there, and it's worth the time that you have put for it to be there. That's what we mean by interrogate?
Yeah, I have a series of like 9 questions. What should be there that isn't? What's there that shouldn't be? Because a lot of times people will not decide they're not going to go to that party, but they don't get it off their calendar. Get it off your calendar. If it's not actually going to happen, get it off. They also forget the things around a calendar appointment. Like if you're going to go to the dentist, you need to get out the door, get prepared, drive, right? Anticipate traffic. Then you need to get back, right? So typically people's calendar is more of a sketch of their time supply than it is a detailed accounting of exactly where their time is going to need to get allocated. I'm not saying there's no place for blanks in your calendar. In fact, that's where we're going to go next. When we actually look at our task list, that's our time demands. So once we do this, you should end with a calendar that still has some open spots, but you feel very confident. These are the hard-edged commitments that I have in my calendar. And here's the time that I have available. This is what I call your time supply. If you're running a basic business, if you don't have a really good sense of supply and demand, like how much inventory do I have to sell this week? If you don't know how much inventory, you're liable to oversell your inventory, which is what people do all the time with their time. They commit to too many things and think that they've got more time to get things done, which means they overcommit to doing too much things, which means that they're either going to have to work nights or weekends to get it all done, or they're going to suffer a loss of credibility when they invariably have to come back to people and say, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you.
Understood.
Got it. So time supply and time demand. So we just took care of time supply. Go over to the demands. Where do your time demands live? On your task list. I know it's weird. Like when I call your calendar your time supply and I call your task list time demands, people have to sort of scratch their head and be like, oh yeah, I guess I've never really thought about it that way. Your calendar is not just your calendar. It is a tool to help you understand your supply of time. And your task list is really there to help you understand the demands on your time. These are the bids for your time. And the problem is you don't have enough supply to meet all of the demand. So what you're really doing when you're going with your task list is you're saying, what are the best, highest quality bids? Right? So if I was selling truffles, I use this example in my book. If you're selling truffles, there's always fewer truffles in the world than there are demand for truffles, right? There's only this small finite supply. And so there's this really elaborate system for allocating truffles in a way where the highest bidder always gets the truffle, right? And so that's what we need to see our time as this highly perishable, incredibly finite thing that needs to go only to the highest bidder. And if you don't send it to the highest bidder, what's happening is you're leaving money on the table and underutilizing that precious resource. So we go through your task list for 5 minutes. And what I really want you to do is the same thing that you did on your calendar. Get rid of the stupid stuff. Come on now. Let's get rid of all that stuff that you know doesn't really need to happen. Let's identify that really high value leverage stuff. Let's get into places where something might be urgent but not important. And let's start to put it in an order where it's going from the order of most leverage to least leverage, or at least most urgent to least urgent, so that we can really understand and look at that top 20%, which is our highest value bids for our time. I'll say one more thing here if I can plug it in. The nature of the modern world is that you will never, from now until the day that you die, ever finish the week and get everything done that you planned for the week. I defy you to have a week, because human nature is that even if you had 1 week where you got it all done, next week you would increase the amount that you thought you could get done, and you would thereby get back into the cycle. We are greedy and lusty for life. We want more. We want to do more. We want to live more. We want to be more. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. But you need to understand that the definition of winning your week is not that everything got done this week. The definition of winning your week is that I did the right things at the right time, in the order of leverage, in the right level of completion. That, my friends, is what David Allen calls the martial art of getting things done. I'm going to say it one more time because I said it really quick. It's doing the right thing at the right time, to the right level of completion with the right degree of leverage. If you can get those things right, you can look back and say to that bottom 80% of your task list that didn't get done, I'm fine with that. I can live with it because I know I did the right things, the right order, to the right level of completion.
Beautiful. And the next step?
Yeah. And that's the final step, which is marry the two together. You've got this beautiful market. You've got time supply. You've got time demands. But if you don't actually marry them together on your calendar, you've stopped before Pinocchio becomes a real boy. So the idea now is to take that top 20% on your task list and actually take it over onto your calendar and give everything a specific time that you're going to do it. Does that mean it's written in stone, like the tablets from Moses of old, and God himself cannot change it? No, it's just an initial sketch of a plan. But here's what happens, and here's what's so beautiful. When you start pulling things over, I don't have one client who will not come back to me after pulling things over and calendarizing and saying, wow, I really don't have as much time as I thought I had. But we tend to live in this world of wishful thinking, and there's nothing that will banish wishful thinking around your calendar and around your capabilities quicker than actually saying, like, how much of this will fit, right?
Yeah.
My grandma used to have a saying, very religious woman, very pious. So this was the only cussing she ever did. She said, it's like 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. She had this analogy. That's like 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. And what I thought was funny of that was this idea that it's just, you're trying to put more in here than could possibly fit, and it's just exploding out. And this is the case with a lot of people's week, is they by not marrying the two together, they have this idea that they're going to fit more in than they can. And what ends up happening is that they got a lot of you-know-what sitting all over the place.
Yeah, that's graphic. It makes the point, because like you're going to have a big old mess on your hands, and something's going to get hurt. Maybe it's your credibility. Maybe it's your sleep. Maybe it is your patience with your loved ones. Something is going to get damaged when you have too much stuff that just doesn't fit with your time supply available.
We're in a crisis right now of commitment debt. This is something people don't think about. We know about financial debt. We know about the crisis of financial debt where people are borrowing against a credit card. They're not really living within their means, but it's happening so slowly and so insidiously that it's just building and building. And for a while, they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and everything's fine until it's not fine. And we're actually experiencing the same thing with commitment debt, meaning every week for 10 years, we're just overcommitting a little bit. And we're just taking what we didn't do this week and we're trying to push it into next week, and we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we're shifting things around, trying to, apologize here and come up late with some miraculous productivity here. But you run that for a decade or 2 decades. And there's a point at which you can't rob Peter to pay Paul anymore. And the whole Ponzi scheme comes falling down, and you realize I am way overcommitted. And that comes from not being clearly anchored in living within your means. And it's not just that you can live within your means financially, you can live within your means from a commitment perspective. Am I actually making commitments that I have enough or more than enough time to satisfy? And I would tell you, most of my clients come to me and they're in severe amount of commitment debt.
Okay. Understood. And what's our next step?
Yeah, that's it. You allocate time supply to time demand, and you meet those two together. Now you've got a plan for the week that actually matches base reality. And I can tell you, do that the first week, you're going to experience something different. And it's not because there's anything so like amazing or magical about our coaching. It's just because you've covered every single important base, right? You have looked at your time supply. You've looked at your time demand. You've understood where your leverage priority is. So you have what I call the holy trinity of planning your week. Look at your time supply, your time demand, and your priorities. You've covered off on each of those bases. That is better than 99.9% of people do. Most people don't plan the week at all. The people who do plan the week, they'll do maybe one of those three, two of those three. It's incredibly rare that you see somebody do all three of those and make sure that it fits into the allocated time in the calendar. The funny thing is it feels magical when you do it. It feels like one of those aha moments where it becomes advanced common sense, where once you do it, you're like, well, I can't really unthink this. I can't really unlearn this because it has to be like this. It just makes sense. But then you look back and say, yeah, well, it can't have made that much sense because I wasn't doing it for years. So it's just a simple way to cover off on every base. When most people can actually just plan their week correctly in the right way, they're going to see that they're winning more weeks. And just like investing, you don't have to win on every investment. You just have to win more investments than you lose to make money. Well, you don't have to win every week. You just have to win more than you lose with leverage to see yourself in a much better position next year than you are this year.
And winning, so we've had the planning. What is winning? Just like executing most of the plan, or how do we define winning?
Well, that's why I define the leverage priority. To me, winning is if I can achieve my leverage priority, I've won for the week. And most of the time I can do that by Tuesday. So if I can do something every single week that has leverage on it, I've won because I've done something this week that makes next week and every week thereafter easier. Now, that's probably 5% of my time. 5% of my working hours is my leverage priority, not even close to the majority. So you don't need, again, perfection not needed, not required here. You don't need to spend 50% of your time working on a leverage priority. If you could just allocate 5% of your working hours to do something that has a little bit of leverage in it, that means that you're planting a seed every single week that's going to benefit all the weeks thereafter. So that's, to me, is the definition of winning. If I can get my leverage priority done every week, I've won. And then thereafter, I'm just scoring extra credit bonus points. So when the week is not, I got everything done. When the week is, I got the big thing done and I made the biggest possible dent I could in the rest.
Beautiful. Demir, tell me, anything else you want to make sure to mention before we shift gears and hear about some of your favorite things?
I would just say that I wrote the book Winning the Week because I think that we need to be more humane in our conception of how we treat ourselves in the productivity world. There's this strong undercurrent right now of like, be more disciplined, be more excellent, get up at 4, do all of the things, do the perfect habits, do everything right. Don't lose a day. And I just feel like that doesn't match up with the thousands and thousands and thousands of clients I've had. Human beings have good days. We have bad days, right? It's a mix. Every day and every week, we're sort of meeting ourselves at a different level. Sometimes we wake up, we've got more energy, more desire to do something, sometimes a little bit less. The thing I love about playing the game in a week-long increment is you can have a bad day or two and still win the week. And this is sort of the message I want to get out to people. You can feel that you got your butt kicked 5 days out of the week and yet still look back and look at what you did that week and realize that you won the week. So I don't want people trying to connect themselves to this idea that I need to be perfect every day. I need to crush it every day. Actually, no, you can get your butt kicked 5 days out of the week. And if you did it with the right level of intention, and if you chose the right leverage points, you can actually look back on a week that you really felt like took you to the cleaners and realize that you won the week.
Big thanks to Demir for sharing his wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. And big thanks to our sponsor, Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for your future. You don't need a lot of money or expertise to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with just your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. NerdWallet.com, whom I love on these sorts of matters, gives Acorns a whopping 4.7 stars and says, quote, if you want to make the most of your spare change, there's no better place to do that than Acorns. Head to acorns.com/awesome or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. And we got a legal disclaimer here. It may not be representative of all clients. Tier 1 compensation provided. Compensation provides an incentive to positively promote Acorns. View important disclosures at acorns.com/awesome. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Please consider your objectives, risk tolerance, and Acorns' fees before investing. Acorns Advisors LLC, Acorns, is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are provided to clients of Acorns by Acorns Securities LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. For more information, visit acorns.com. One sponsor to check out is Harvard Business Review. This brilliant magazine, published at hbr.org, is the leading destination for smart management thinking. Fun fact, HBR has been mentioned in 108 episodes of the show. That's because HBR has great stuff that comes up often. They've got explainer videos, podcasts, real-world case studies, and much more. I think of HBR each night that I put on my special orange glasses. Their article, Will Blue Light Glasses Improve Your Sleep?, revealed that those who wore them reported better sleep and a 7% improvement in work performance as compared to those who wore the sham glasses. So I cite HBR anytime anyone tells me that I look silly wearing them. Now, much of HBR's content is available for free when you sign up at their site. Subscriptions that get you unlimited content cost $10 a month. If you visit hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME, you can save 10% off of that subscription. Again, to save 10% off of your HBR subscription, go to www.hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME. One sponsor to check out is Storyworth. Whenever I'm thinking about meaningful Father's Day gifts, Storyworth leaps to mind. Storyworth helps you preserve precious memories and stories from your father for years to come. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved ones a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick, such as, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? I personally love their prompt so much that I have refreshed Storyworth's questions page many times looking for more. Storyworth makes the writing process super quick and easy. All your loved one needs to do is respond to that email with a story, and then you get a quick copy of that. And after a year of this fun, Storyworth compiles your loved one's stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. Families love Storyworth so much, they've got 25,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot and have millions of stories preserved. So give all the fathers in your life a unique, heartfelt gift they'll all cherish for years. Storyworth. Right now, you can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/awesome. That's storyworth.com/awesome to save $10 on your first purchase. Fantastic. Well, now can you tell us a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
We came up with the one thing when we were talking earlier, and I just think that book is a productivity Bible. There's so many quotes and amazing things from that book. So although I don't have a quote, I'll put in everything in the book, the one thing. That book is just amazing.
All right. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
I think the best one, his name is Czechoslovakian. It's so hard. It's Semensky or something like that.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi?
There we go. Thank you. Yeah. He did a study that basically said it proved that when we walk away from a task that's incomplete, our brain continues trying to problem solve around it. Unless, and this was the important part of the study that really intrigued me, unless you actually gave yourself a breadcrumb trail to come back to it. So that when we actually terminated something midway, meaning we hadn't completed it, if we actually created a specific plan for when we were going to come back to it and what we were going to do when we came back to it, they found that your brain actually didn't spin around it. I think the reason I love that so much is because the truth is that we still have to live as human beings in the midst of our productivity journey. There's always going to be moments where you're deep in the middle of something, you're knee deep in it, and you need to step away, whether that's the weekend where we all have to step away every 5 days, or whether it's a crisis in your personal life and you need to step away from something. I think there's something so beautiful about being able to sort of recognize, if I don't give myself a specific time and plan when I'm going to come back to this, I'm going to be spinning on it and burning a lot of cognitive energy. That's going to keep me from enjoying my weekend. It's going to keep me from being present in this moment where I need to be present. But if I actually just say, this is the plan and this is where I'm coming back to it, I can actually put it down and know that my brain isn't burning and losing cognitive energy as I'm facing this thing that I need to face in my personal life.
All right. And a favorite tool?
I think my favorite tool is Asana. And the reason my favorite tool is Asana, or choose your flavor, it could be Monday.com, is because I think it represents a paradigm shift in how we think about productivity and communication. And that's a different podcast. But I think Asana is more than a technology. I think it's a paradigm shift.
Okay. And is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks? They quote it back to you often.
I say all the time, I say perfection not required.
All right. Thank you. If folks want to learn more, get in touch, where would you point them?
Yeah, check us out at winningtheweek.com, or you can check us out at lifehackmethod.com. That points to all of our different socials, and we're everywhere. We're on Insta and we're on YouTube. So got some cool training. So if you want to sample a little of the goods, we've got a lot of free trainings on YouTube and different places you can check us out.
All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Do less than you think. Just like working out, people think, I got to get in the gym. I got to become this warrior. I'm going to lose all this weight. And when really what you should be doing is just getting out and getting up to 10,000 steps. The difference between 7,000 steps and 10,000 steps is huge when it comes to your health. And the difference between planning your week for 30 minutes versus not is tremendous in your productivity. So stop trying to be a weekend warrior and get in there and be Rambo and just blow the competition away, and start thinking about really, really small things that can have huge disproportionate effects for your productivity.
Fantastic. Demir, this is awesome. I wish you much winning of many weeks.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure, man.
I love so much what Demir had to say, particularly about putting particular tasks on your calendar. And I've resisted this for a long time personally, because it's like, oh, I want to be flexible. I don't want to tie myself down, etc. But I think about it more now like a garage or a space in a house. I got a bunch of stuff, depends on my time, and there's places I could put that stuff, times on the calendar. And if I don't have a clear home for stuff, then it just kind of gets all over the place. And if you have a huge house or garage relative to how much stuff you have, it doesn't matter. Throw it anywhere on the floor anytime you want, and it'll be there and you can find it, and it's all good. But if you're like me and most listeners of How to Be Awesome at Your Job, most likely there's tons of demands on your time, insufficient space or supply for it, and thusly, by putting some specific times associated with doing the things, it's kind of like having clear shelves or cabinets or places where the items can go, your commitments can go, and then you can feel good, I sure do, a sense of peace or relief knowing, oh, that's going to get handled because I put it in my calendar. I don't have to worry, oh, but there's not going to be any time for me. Oh, no, I've put time for resting, for connecting with people, etc., right there on the calendar too. So I can feel good knowing that, oh, it's there. It's taken care of. It's accounted for. It's covered. That's where that lives. That's where that belongs. Great relief and goodness coming from Demir's wisdom here. If you would like a summary write-up of this conversation and all 935 of these interviews, please sign up for the Gold Nugget emails at awesomeatyourjob.com. And the particular show notes and transcript for this conversation are found at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP935. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.